Good evening. Today is Sunday, March 22nd, 2026. I'm Rich Stevens, and this is the Cold Take. What you're about to hear is news from this week, taken only from primary sources like press conferences and court documents. You can find those sources and attribution for every story at thecoldtake.com. We begin in Washington, D.C., where, as of this recording, March 22nd, the federal government has been in a partial shutdown for 36 days. TSA, DHS, FEMA, and the Coast Guard are unfunded and employees are not being paid. Employee callouts have caused extended waits for air travelers, with airports asking travelers to arrive as much as 3 hours early. Democrats are refusing to fund DHS without reforms to ICE. Republicans are refusing to pass partial funding that doesn't include DHS. Democrats say that Republicans refuse to pay the TSA because, in the words of Senator Hakeem Jeffries, quote, the extremists support unleashing ICE brutality on the American people. Republicans say that TSA remains unpaid because Democrats insist on keeping DHS shut down. Neither side has 60 votes to break the filibuster in the Senate, and neither side is willing to relinquish what leverage they have, so the standoff continues. On Saturday, March 14th, Virginia lawmakers advanced House Bill 110, creating a new misdemeanor offense for leaving a handgun in an unattended vehicle unless it is locked and out of plain view in a secured container. Criticism for the law includes the provision that exempts state legislators from adherence while parked at the State House. This is part of a larger push by Governor Spanberger and Democratic legislators to pass strict firearms laws in the state. You can read the text of the bill at thecoldtake.com. On Saturday, March 21st, Robert S. Mueller III passed away. Mueller served as director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation from 2001 to 2013 and was appointed special counsel by the U.S. Department of Justice in May of 2017. He led the federal investigation into Russian interference in the 2026 presidential election and submitted his report in March of 2019. It did not establish a criminal conspiracy between the Trump campaign and Russia. In July 2025, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence released declassified material and a whistleblower account alleging that the intelligence underlying the 2017 Russia assessment was manipulated and based in part on discredited information. The release documents internal disputes and challenges to the validity of those intelligence conclusions. Following Mueller's death, Donald J. Trump posted to Truth Social saying, quote, "Good, I'm glad he's dead. He can no longer hurt innocent people." Robert Mueller was 81 years old. In world news, Israel Defense Forces announced that on Friday, March 20th, Iran launched a multi-stage ICBM at joint UK-US base Diego Garcia. This represents a 2,500-mile range, meaning that Iran has the technical capability of striking any target in Europe except for Ireland, Portugal, and Iceland. It also gives them strike capability for large parts of Russia and China, all of India, and most of Thailand. This is particularly interesting because the director of National Counterterrorism Center, Joe Kent, resigned this week in a public letter to X. He previously spoke publicly, including on the Sean Ryan Show, saying that Iran is already at war with the United States, and he laid out details about Iran being an active threat actor. However, in his resignation and immediately after, while speaking to Tucker Carlson, he said that Iran posed no immediate threat. Democrats in Congress have also asserted that Iran posed no imminent threat. The president stated during his State of the Union address that Iran possessed weapons with enough range to target Europe. Moving over to current events, Tuesday, March 17th, Dallas police held a press conference to speak about the shooting death of 39-year-old Damon Mazar Robinson, who also went by Mike King. Robinson was fatally shot by officers on Wednesday, March 11th in a parking garage. He had been using fictitious information and police-style uniforms to falsely identify himself as a law enforcement officer. He was wanted on multiple felony warrants as well as a parole violation. He was also part of Texas Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett's security detail for several years. On March 11th, police say he was located and he refused to exit his vehicle. Officers negotiated with him for more than an hour before he finally exited the vehicle. However, when he did, he pulled a firearm and was then shot. The body camera footage, the press conference, and Representative Crockett's statement are all available at thecoldtake.com. In a follow-up to one of last week's stories, on Friday, March 13th, 2026, ATF filed a criminal complaint charging Kenya Mikkel Chapman with federal firearms violations tied to the March 12th shooting at Old Dominion University. The affidavit states Chapman admitted in a 2021 investigation to straw purchasing multiple firearms later recovered in violent crimes, including a homicide. Federal records show Chapman continued acquiring firearms and later sold one to Mohammed Baylor Jalloh, identified as the shooter last week at Old Dominion University. Under the Biden administration, federal authorities documented serious firearms violations, obtained an admission, but ultimately did not put Chapman in prison. On Friday, March 13th, a federal jury in Fort Worth, Texas, convicted 9 individuals for the July 4th, 2025 attack on the Prairieland ICE Detention Center in Alvarado, Texas. 8 defendants were convicted of terrorism-related charges, including conspiracy, rioting, and the use of explosives. A 9th was convicted of document concealment tied to the investigation. The group were members of a North Texas antifa cell that coordinated the attack, and their potential sentences range from 10 to 60 years. Attorney General Pam Bondi stated, quote, "Antifa is a domestic terrorist organization that has been allowed to flourish in Democrat-led cities, not under President Trump." Beginning March 20th, 2026, retail businesses in the state of New York must accept cash. S 4153-A requires that any business selling in the state must accept American dollars and coins in denominations of $20 and below. They cannot charge more for cash, and penalties for violations begin at $1,000. On Thursday, March 19th, Carlos Ray Chuck Norris passed away in Hawaii. It was said he could slam a revolving door, counted to infinity twice, and could divide by zero. Born in Ryan, Oklahoma in 1940, Norris held black belts in karate, taekwondo, tang sudo, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and judo. He starred in 196 episodes of Walker, Texas Ranger from 1993 to 2001 and founded Chun Kuk Do, his own style of martial arts. Chuck Norris was 86 years old. Nearly 10 years ago, 49 people were killed and another 53 injured in the shooting at Pulse nightclub in Orlando. This week, demolition began to prepare the site for a permanent memorial. In 2019, the state awarded a $500,000 grant to the One Pulse Foundation for the creation of a memorial. Despite having raised somewhere around $20 million, the foundation did not meet its obligations. The state recouped almost $400,000 of the grant money, and the city of Orlando is now overseeing the project. In financial news, markets fell this week, continuing a 4-week slide. The Dow lost over 2%, falling 1,001 points and closing at 45,557. That's the lowest week ending since October. NASDAQ also lost 2%, falling 458 points and closing at 21,647. The S&P 500 suffered similarly. The 6,505 close was a 127-point loss, also nearly 2%. Meanwhile, gold dropped more than 10%. The $531 loss left futures at $4,492 at close of trading on Friday. Chuck Norris doesn't do push-ups. He pushes the earth down. Chuck Norris can do a wheelie on a unicycle. Chuck Norris makes onions cry. Chuck Norris can start a fire by rubbing 2 pieces of ice together. Chuck Norris can win a game of Connect 4 in 3 moves. The Grim Reaper didn't come for Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris came for the Grim Reaper, and now Chuck Norris is the Grim Reaper. Alright, that's all I've got. Hit like, subscribe to the channel, share this video with your friends. Cheers. Also Friday, March 13th, U.S. Attorney Janine Pirro spoke about the ongoing case involving the Board of Governors in the Federal Reserve System. The Fed is renovating 2 buildings for their headquarters and is more than $1 billion over budget. After repeated requests for information were ignored by the Fed, 2 grand jury subpoenas were issued for Jerome Powell to provide testimony so that taxpayers can understand where that money is gone. District Court Judge James Boasberg stepped in and squashed both subpoenas and then sealed the documents so I can't even read them. Pirro asserted that the decision is in contradiction to the Supreme Court, impedes the investigation, and frustrates the public interest in the case. She will be appealing the ruling, and you can watch her full statement at thecoldtake.com. Wednesday, March 18th, Fed Chair Jerome Powell spoke following this month's board meeting. He said the economy is expanding, unemployment is low, and inflation remains somewhat elevated. He declined to lower interest rates for the second month in a row, claiming the Middle East conflict creates uncertainty. They anticipate GDP growth of 2.4% this calendar year, a stronger projection than the December numbers. February unemployment was 4.4% with little change since the summer. He mentioned that if his successor is not confirmed by the end of his term in May, he will continue to serve as chair pro tem until a successor is confirmed. He said he will not leave the board until the investigation is over, and his full remarks are, as always, posted at thecoldtake.com. And in sports, Tuesday night, March 17th, the United States faced Venezuela in the finals of the 2026 World Baseball Classic. Down by 2 in the 8th, Bryce Harper hit a 2-run homer to center to tie the game. Venezuela retook the lead in the top of the 9th and was able to close out the game for their first ever World Baseball Classic championship. MLB opening night will feature the New York Yankees at the San Francisco Giants on March 25th at 8:05 Eastern on Netflix. In Las Vegas last weekend, Denny Hamlin secured his 61st NASCAR win. His last win came at the same track last year. He had to overcome an early penalty, driving from 31st place to win, having led 134 laps. The win came following the death of his father last year, as well as a protracted legal battle between his team and NASCAR. His team is challenging the control NASCAR has over the sport as a whole. Finally, it is March Madness, and the 2026 NCAA basketball tournament is underway. First round upsets included an 83-82 win over Wisconsin by High Point University. Texas advanced with a 79-71 win over BYU. Texas A&M beat St. Mary's 63-50, and VCU toppled UNC 82-78. Duke needed 135 minutes to take the lead from 16th seeded Siena before securing a 71-65 win. Tennessee ended the run for Miami of Ohio in a 78-56 game. Saturday, the 11th seeded Texas took down 3rd seed Gonzaga 74-68. The second round continues today with the Sweet 16 starting March 26th. And like it or not, that's what happened. I'm Rich Stevens, and this has been The Cold Take.